Assalamu alaikum. Today, I just want to discuss royalty, not just the issue of the Queen, because I don't want to talk about a woman who's just passed away, because it's quite disrespectful. But it's the concept of royalty. What is it? Why is it so prevalent in some societies? Not all societies. Why do some societies actually detest royalty, and some really follow royalty? And what's the Islamic position of this? I mean, in terms of history, what did we do with royalty? I mean, we have lots of royalty in the Muslim world, but we never had royalty before. And so, what is royalty? And is it a good thing, or is it a bad thing? So that's what I really want to talk about. I mean, what's your position in royalty? What's your name, Mister? What's your name?
It's Ali.
Ali. What's your position in royalty?
I think uh, I don't really have a say on it, but it's just basically in the in the past, in the generations, how these monarchy and everyone's who's built up their families and their status, they just wanted it to carry on.
Okay.
So basically, even like in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt or in any places where the queens or kings have been given their names, they've just got it from their forefathers just to build up their reputation.
Yeah, you see, the royal system is a very old form of ruleship, which existed heavily in Europe, in the Middle East as well, in Asia for centuries and centuries. So it's hard to dismantle the system which has been around for essentially thousands and thousands of years. Um, Now, royalty is hereditary rule where it's passed on, from blood to blood. And in today's society, we don't believe in hereditary rule passed on from blood to blood, um, because whenever societies pass on rulership from blood to blood, it always ends up in some kind of weakness and oppression upon the majority, because the wealth is accumulated for the rich. But in the UK, it's not quite like that, is it? Because in the UK,
Mm.
the royal system doesn't really rule. It's a parliament that rules. We have these things called democratic principles and democratic rule of law. So
So then
royalty
why do you
is
have queens and kings then?
well, queens and kings are the symbol of royalty, isn't it? Because the feminine and masculine, the queen and the king,
Mm.
and so they exist in order to rule society and to govern over society and to make themselves superior over other people. But now got the death of the Queen, and there's many mixed opinions. Even in this society, you get a lot of anti royalists, which are called loyalists, demonstrating in Wales, in Scotland, in the UK, and some of them have been arrested. And so because people are allowed to they're allowed to protest. There's nothing wrong with this to an extent. But the rulership in this country is not a direct monarchy. It's a partial monarchy where the monarchy only rules to an extent, but the rule of law is actually in the hands of the Parliament and the House of Lords. But anyway, when we go back to royalty itself, what is the Islamic perspective of royalty? Because it's important to look at it from the issue of what is right, what is wrong, Islamically. Now, loyalty itself, royalty is one of the forbidden forms of rule in Islam, apparently. Um, it's because sovereignty, which in Arabic is called siyada, is given to a family, to a blood, to a line, to a heritage. Now, in Islamically, we don't give sovereignty to human beings; we give it to the Creator. But the human beings, what they do is they implement whatever the Creator says. And whenever the Quran talks about kingships and monarchies, it's always described as oppression. Now you might think, where's the oppression happening? Where is it? People are not physically being whipped, but the oppression happens in many aspects. And one of the aspects is accumulation of wealth for the few.
But
Um,
but in the Quran, in the Holy Quran, when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala gave a, a land to one of the prophets, the
yeah,
people the people
yeah,
said said to the people that why has he got it? He's got no wealth. He's got nothing. So why did he get the ownership of that land? So who was that? Sorry, it's not registered in my name.
There was a
It's
few.
in one of. Say that again.
I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm not sure which reference that is, but there's been a few monarchies pre-Islam which have been
Yeah,
prophets. Prophet Suleiman at Islam, Dawood at
Suleiman.
Islam,
Yeah.
and they were regarded to be kings of the time. Now, the thing is, Islam didn't come for a group of people like within isolated to a land. It came for the whole of mankind. So the rule of law is for the whole of mankind. Whereas in the past, some kind of royalty system might have been good for a certain group of people, especially if the king was a God fearing and implemented the hakam of Allah, sovereignty to Allah, siyada to Allah, and that's good. But humans, by their nature, don't do that. They don't implement by justice. They don't to take the wealth for themselves and rule for themselves, and that's why when Islam came, it abolished all forms of rule that existed before to give a common form of rule to the whole of mankind and not just a group of people in society. And we don't believe in sovereignty for people. That includes within the system of what we call democracy. And that's a different topic altogether, because many people, Muslim scholars, not scholars but thinkers, they debate on the issue of democracy, what it is. Is it acceptable? What type of democracy is acceptable? But generally, it's accepted within the Islamic text that kingships are forbidden. Now we see kingships in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, in many parts of the Muslim world. Now we all know that kingships in these countries of it's just families who rule over people, accumulate the wealth, and they maybe use law like religion to suppress people in order to keep themselves in power.
So when you say suppress people using religion, what do you mean?
Well, it's always good, you know. The monarchy which has power has to rule its subjugates by a certain fear in order to make sure that the monarchy itself is the seat of the king of the queen is robust. Now sometimes it could be by fear of the army, but in some parts of the world it's fear of where they use Islam, or in the case of Saudi Arabia to an extent, is they use Islam to say that we have to obey the law of the land, we have to obey the king, we have to obey this, we have to obey this. So people feel afraid to speak out against whatever the leadership is doing, however corrupt, immoral the leadership might be, because I think they're going against Islam. And this is obviously incorrect, because what we have, the system of rule we have in Islam, is known as the Khilafah, and the head of state, and the head of state is known as the Khalif. Now, the Khalif, some people in the West describe him as being a sultan, as being a king. Kingship is different. The concept of king and rulership is different from monarchy in Islam, because if you want to call the Khalif a king, go ahead, call him whatever you want, call him anything. In fact, but the thing is, as long as the person in charge of the Khalif, which the Arabic name is correct, implements the book of the rules based upon the Quran and the Sunnah, and gives sovereignty to the Creator, and doesn't amass the wealth for his benefit and for his family's benefit, and for purpose of sectarianism. This is the type of rulership that we actually do accept, which is in fact correct. Um, Even in the West, kings and queens are dying. I mean, I don't know any Western country that really ruled by kings and queens anymore. They used to, obviously, at one time, and it was very oppressive. The Christian Church, when it was very powerful in the UK and the whole of Europe, in fact, the kings and queens, the Christian Church would put the kings and queens in power and make society think that the kings and queens, the people in power, were appointed by God. So people couldn't question when kings raised taxes and oppressed people and accumulated wealth, told people to go to end their stupid wars like in the Crusades, because they thought they were obeying God. So this is blind faith. This is just blindism. And so,
So if you compare, if you talk about like today, what's happened in with the Queen and oh, who gets that position? Because is it was it not? it should not have just been given to Prince Charles, or I mean, I've heard that it's gone to, Prince William.
No, it's gone to Prince Charles because he's the rightful heir. But that's the whole point of monarchy. It goes to the second in charge. It doesn't matter which male or female is in charge, but it's a bloodline which is not really acceptable in any society in the modern world. In fact, not just the modern world, even the past, it was rejected completely, the bloodline. But I don't want to talk about the UK monarchy system because the UK monarchy system is very limited. It doesn't really have any power.
Hmm.
They have an immense amount of wealth and land in Scotland and Wales and in London and Yorkshire and Lancashire, whatever it could be, and which they've accumulated over many years. And that's why people are against that particular house because they are so rich and powerful. Whereas people are not quite struggling, especially in today's society. And really, the sovereignty is not in the hands of the king and queen anyway; it's in the hands of the parliament. But the entire system is man-made anyway. If it's a king system or it's
Yeah,
democratic system, it's all man-made. So
yeah,
we don't talk about one thing in particular. We talk about the entire system, which we believe to be completely wrong.
yeah.
I'm not just. It's not just an attack on. I'm not attacking like a Western um, system of rule. I'm attacking the system of rule which exists throughout the entire world. Um, the Muslim world is far from perfect. In fact, it's quite opposite from perfect. We have nothing but anarchy and disaster. And
It's because that no one's. Is that because no one's following the holy book, the Holy Quran?
you see, if you don't implement Islam in society, you're going to get anarchy. You might be peaceful, you might be happy, but as a society, you become corrupt, you become immoral, and you become unjust. That's just nature of things, and you go against the natural order of the universe. Because when the law itself that we follow is part of the order of the universe, it has a balance, and if you go against the balance, society becomes decadent and it destroys itself.
So
But
who's who's so who is following the law of the
now,
actual law?
you see, this is a controversial question because who's following the law of Allah to implement Islam? I mean, people say Taliban, people say Saudi Arabia, people say Malaysia, people say this, people say that, people say this. Obviously, we know it's a much more complicated system than what we perceive. There are some people societies who are better than the other, but we've noticed that any society that attempts to implement Islam is always shunned and destroyed and ostracized and sanctioned anyway in the West, um, because we have this thing called liberal democracy, and liberal democracy has to rule the world, not kingship. No one ever talks about kingship ruling the world because that's an old archaic system, and that's why Britain, to an extent, is not really modern compared to other European nations. But we so the democratic principles of liberal democracy is what rules the world, and which by force has to rule the world. Otherwise, the consequences are quite severe. And so we have dictatorships, but in many different forms. I was speaking to, and this is true. I was speaking to a Kurdish person today, and he's from Iraq.
Hmm.
It's quite funny what he's because I just asked him. I was in a conversation with him just generally, and he himself just said, "Oh, it's a bit of a disaster, Iraq. It's at the moment. It's this and that. It's
Yeah.
quite bad." And I said, and then he said to me, "Well, that out of the blue, it's better under Saddam, but he's Kurd. I thought Kurds were massacred and gassed under Saddam. The Kurds and the Shia." And I said to him, "You know what? This is quite controversial." He said, "Yeah, but what we have now is complete anarchy. We don't have anything." And now, when you talk about system of law in the world, it's always made as in the benefit of Western masters based upon this under the system of capitalism. And when Saddam Hussein, when he was in power, he was put into power by the British. Everyone knows this. The Iraq War, which is a very bloody war, he was funded by America and also the Western powers because there was an interest for him, and he was a golden child. In fact, when he was oppressing his people for well before the attacks he did in Kurdistan, with the gas attacks, he was very heavily supported by the West because he was a man in power. He was a dictator, and he was willing to implement Western policy um, in the Middle East. Now, it's only when he became independent, when he said, "Look, I'm powerful enough to be independent. I'm not following your what we call sphere of influence," that he was heavily attacked and destroyed, was sanctioned first of all, which lasted for many decades, and eventually he was toppled under a forced coup d'état. I'm not saying he was perfect. He was a very oppressive and rebellious against the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he did become good towards the end because he realized all the stuff he followed before was wrong anyway. But the thing is, but the Western society doesn't implement something which is based upon good and truth, because if that was true, they would allow the Muslim world to choose for itself. Whenever the Muslim world has come to power and chosen for itself, it's always been suppressed, because I know it's going to go against the interests of the West and maybe against the state of Israel, which is more so than anything else. So we don't have any independent authority or state throughout the whole of the Muslim world. Don't forget, we're divided into 52 different countries, 52 different pieces of the cake, and you're not going to get power unless you unite. And there's no example as such of the rule of law according to Islam anywhere in existence today. Even with the Taliban, people talk about to an extent. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda against that society and a lot of lies. But there are issues with Taliban which are quite confusing even to me, to be really honest with you. But issue of education, but
So
that
who controls the in Afghanistan, the Taliban?
the Taliban are quite independent. They're not really controlled by anybody. But the thing is, they are influenced. That's why they were able to come to power. They are. There's an influence there because they want to be recognized by Western societies in order for them to get aid and to use
Yeah,
the international banking system, which makes a lot of sense. But they've had to compromise in many different aspects, which is why within Afghanistan, people who are more Islamic than Taliban, are trying to
yeah.
fight Taliban. There's always issue going on here and there, and so it's not a perfect society, but it's better than some societies because Afghanistan, before Taliban came, let's not pretend 20 years of Western influence in Afghanistan. Now, this is not me saying, this is statistics. When they talk about education for women, they built the America. They did actually invest in building buildings like some schools, some hospitals. In fact, even the hospitals to say were just refurbished. They only built one or two hospitals, but the thing is, with schools, there were empty shelves. They were empty, and it said that up until now, 70% of females in Afghanistan are illiterate. Wait a minute, you have 20 years to rule, but 70% of people are illiterate. So what? So why are you talking about education and females when you didn't really educate people?
Mm,
Now, one of the biggest problems that we had in the 20-year rule was crime and corruption. People being kidnapped off the streets, women being taken and abused, kids being abused. This is very prevalent. And in fact, even I remember when the news reporters were going into Afghanistan, into Kabul, when Taliban took over, within 24 hours, they were asking the people. There wasn't fear. It was like they were honest, genuine people. Said, at least we're not going to be kidnapped. At least we're not going to be shot on the streets for no reason, caught in the crossfire of bullets. Because
mm.
Taliban, they confiscated their weapons, they weakened the warlords, and they established security in society. Now, before you talk about democracy and kingships and this shit and that shit, people, what they want security. If they don't have security, whatever system or ism you have above you, it becomes irrelevant if you can't provide security for the people, and
I
that's
think
prevalent.
I think with the amount of wealth, I think anyone can find security. Then doesn't matter if you're a, you know,
Yeah, but then
king.
you live in walls, you live in enclaves. But we talk about society, we talk about a country.
Mm.
As a country, as a nation, Afghanistan has been very insecure, really
That's
ripen
why
with drugs, with crime. I mean, one of the biggest supplies, if not the, of opium in the world is Afghanistan, and then it's a haram substance. It's completely forbidden.
that's why everyone's running away from that place.
Yeah, well, people are running away from that place because of lack of economic prosperity.
Yeah.
Now, what the the Western nations are trying to keep a very tight grip on Taliban because they don't want this form of Islam to spread into Pakistan, into neighbors. Okay, so they're trying to um, have a leash, the financial leash. So they're not allowing it access to monetary funds. Well, nobody wants the IMF. That's the last thing that they should have because the IMF makes you a slave to the system, quite blatantly. In fact, it's a very corrupt system. But the
Can,
thing is
can I
that,
can I just hold you there for 1 second, please? Can I just hold there for 1 second? I'll be back in 2 minutes.
okay.
One minute, sorry.
Well, I think whilst it's gone, I just want to talk about something I heard quite recently
Sorry.
regarding. So before, whilst you oh God, I was thought I'll just think of a topic I heard quite recently regarding the issue of the Queen and people doing dua and praying for the Queen, and there was even an incident in where a Yemeni
Saudi
went to
Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. A Yemeni went to Saudi Arabia to do dua for the Kaaba to pray
Was
for
he
the
a,
Queen.
was he a Muslim or a non-Muslim?
Well, he was Yemeni, and 99.999% Yemenis are Muslim, whether Shia or Sunni, but they are Muslim to it, and they're doing tawaf on the Kaaba. So, if he wasn't a Muslim, he wouldn't do the tawaf, logically speaking. He'd do some other form of worship for the
Mm,
Queen. And obviously, we only pray for people we can only do tawaf for our parents,
yeah.
people, and so um, there are
I
other
mean, you can do it
categories.
only for Muslims. You can only
Yeah,
do.
only for Muslims because obviously it benefits the Muslims who are in the grave. It adds to the good deeds.
So then,
Um,
why did this Yemeni person
because
individual?
we have this thing called intellectual colonialism, which exists in Africa a lot. In fact, wow, and it exists in Asian subcontinent and much parts of the Middle East. Because don't forget, Britain was a colonial power. It was a very powerful, ruthless power within much of the Muslim world after the demise of the Khilafah when Muslims were
Mm,
divided. But people see this is a sad thing. Many nations see the British as being superior in terms of the monarchy, but yet the British, some of them want to destroy the monarchy. In fact, all the British have weakened the monarchy. That's why we have parliament. That's why we have all this. The monarchy doesn't have any power anyway. But
mm.
why is it people in the East see the monarchy as such a big thing as this and that? Not because they're ruled by the monarchy. And to them, however racist and oppressive it was better than what they have now. So if you outweigh the two, do something like Tabjia in Arabic, okay? You can say, okay, the past was better when we had this, but people don't go to the past just before that when we had Khilafah because um, any history of Islamic history, even however recent it may be, is being evaded and erodes from libraries,
So,
from the education system.
so
It's
it's like they've erased what's happened.
Yeah, because you're not allowed
Uh,
to talk about it. It's in many parts of the Muslim world. You're forbidden to even. In fact, it is part of the Egyptian. It is part of the Arab curriculum. Talk about Khilafah to an extent, but not as. But you're forbidden to talk about it as a solution, as a problem, for mankind in the modern world. Only talk about it theologically. It existed. This is what it did, and that's it. So
yeah, that's
people cling to whatever they remember that was good, and maybe the kingship before was good, even though it was very racist. But unless we take ourselves away from this mentality, we're always going to be weak. You
mm,
see, in Africa, I mean, I watched this Al Jazeera program, and it was about Nigeria, and they were saying that whenever a white person goes to Nigeria to do work, the amount of servancy attached to that person, the amount of respect that person gives is given. It's like he's a member of the family because they see the white man as being a representative of the royal family, which is quite
so
funny.
automatically he gets
Yeah,
that
he gets a lot of respect.
recognition.
And it doesn't matter if he's completely stupid and ignorant, okay? It just he gets that automatically. And I've worked in the Middle East and I've seen that myself, okay? And it's because people still have the colonial mentality, which they because they're not happy with what they have at the moment. If they had an alternative to what they have, because democracy hasn't worked in anywhere in the Muslim world, in fact. So people don't have an alternative, so they see something as white as being superior, and they look at superiority by material wealth, or the West is really rich, it's got good education, therefore they're superior.
So
But
so if I've gone to that place, would
mm,
they not recognize me as that person as
no,
well?
not because you're brown. It doesn't matter how many titles you have next to your name.
Mm,
You're brown, you won't get the same respect. 100% you won't get the same respect. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I felt it as well. But you get used to it.
mm.
And some of these these English people, they drink alcohol, they go half naked, they disobey the laws of the land, they go against the culture of society. because they know they can get away with it. In fact, they attempt to change the culture of society, forget
Yeah, they
going
can.
against it. They have an
That's it.
influence, a major influence, in fact. But the culture is quite filthy. It's not really correct. It's there's a lot of immorality in Western culture. The family systems are broken up. 70% of the children are born out of wedlock. It's not a good society role model to follow.
I
Old
think it's
people, yeah, old people.
I
When
think it's
parents are put into old people's homes by the mass, they don't look after their parents. It's not a good role model because they have economic, and people see the economic wealth as being superior. The reason why, because we're ruled by capitalism,
mm,
and the basis of capitalism is capital, which is wealth. So if that's your premise of good and bad, if that's your premise of happiness and sadness, uh, content and discontent, what's going to happen? If you have capital, then you're going to be superior. If you have a
yeah,
society based upon religion, your God fearingness will be superior compared to anything else.
anything. Yeah,
And your morality, it's because our switching is wrong, our thinking is completely wrong, and so we have that colonial mentality. It's going to take a bit of a while to erase, but the only way to erase it if the people see an alternative like a light. There's no light, there's only darkness, and so if a light gets established in the Muslim world, which soon inshallah will be, people will follow the light and cling to it, and forget the history and realize how bad their histories actually were. And there's the other thing as well. You get this intellectual attack against Islam, which weakens Muslims quite heavily, and it comes under
because
the
obviously they think Muslims are weak, so they, like you
yeah,
said, intellectual.
because our education is weak. I mean, it's not education because Islam is very powerful. I mean, you can read and read and read forever. You can never finish learning about Islam. It's just it's our access to the education which is quite weak. Um, if you look at, for example, this recently, I mean, one of the main instruments in intellectually declining Muslims is what we call Orientalism.
Mm.
Orientalism existed for hundreds of years in the Muslim world to destroy the Muslims because they couldn't destroy Islam militarily, economically, religiously. They couldn't destroy it. It was too powerful, and it was spreading. It was coming all the way into Europe.
Were
Gates
they
of
not trying
Paris.
to? Were they not
Gates
trying
of
to?
Paris.
Were they not trying to destroy the religious leaders in Syria?
Not just Syria. In terms of history, what they did was they established schools of Orientalism throughout the whole of the Muslim world, as under the disguise of science. But Muslims had a great deal of science. In fact, we were very pronounced. In fact, to learn science, you had to learn Arabic for the whole of the world, a known world at a few not so many hundreds of years ago.
Not
The
anymore.
language of science changes according to leadership. As long as it gets according to who's superior of
Mm.
science. Now, in the time of Germany, it was German. To learn science, you had to learn German because that was superior. Now it's English. So language changes. Language of science changes. At one time, it was Arabic. There's no doubt about it. Even many stars and many systems, many aspects of biology are named after Arabs. Mathematics named after Arabs. But they've changed the actual names so it doesn't sound Arabic. And now they've taken away the Arabic names, replaced it with Greek names and some Latin names and some other name which is completely alien to what it was originally, which is quite clever. And so the language of science has changed because it was in the hands of the Muslims for many, 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 many hundreds of years. So what the Orientalists did, they couldn't attack it rationally because you can't. It's very rationally. It's very common, very easy to prove God exists. So these Orientalists, they believed in God because many of them were Christians. Okay, some of them were very secular.
Mm.
So what they did was they established a nationalism in the Muslim world. They divided Muslims. They went to the Turks and said, "You're Turks, the Ottomans. You should be ruling over the Arabs. They're inferior." Went to the Arabs. Why are you being ruled over by the Turks when Islam came in for the Arabs? Well, Lawrence of Arabia, we know many people, but the institutes were very powerful, and eventually they caused nationalism, which is why nationalism is so detest. In fact, there's one hadith of nationalism that can't even describe to the audience because it's so disgusting in terms of and
Mm.
how disgusting it's. And sometimes when Rasulullah, Prophet Muhammad uses a certain disgusting metaphor, it shows you how disgusting that thing actually is. But anyway, one is he who calls for Asabiya, fights for Asabiya, dies for Asabiya. Is not one of us. So it's Asabiya is nationalism, tribalism, partisanship, all these isms which divide people, and which are very shallow ways of thinking, which are very shallow ways of rule and leadership. But now what we have is the Orientalists. because Islam was destroyed as a ruling system under the Khilafah, they're able to go much further. So what they do, they can't destroy Islam because many people are Muslims in the world and they can't see themselves attacking Islam like we do some people. So what they do, they have a very smile, friendly face, and so they promote Islam. They have Islamic institutes in Africa, in America, like SOAS, School of Oriental African Studies. They have it around the world, many big libraries, and they teach Islamic studies everywhere. But these places, what they do, they orientalize Arabic terminology and Arabic history. So they present Islam to you. Islam's really good. It's really nice, yeah. But you don't. This is not really correct what people there believe. This is what people. This is what it actually says. One of the term is we have is that the term kufar. People don't want to use the word kufar to non-Muslims anymore. They want to say, oh, Ahli Kitab, and there's kufar. There's Ahli Kitab and there's the mushrikeen, but the kufar is not everybody. Kufar, and they use very clever
Terminology, yeah.
terminology, ayat al-Quran and the hadith.
So
And
they're
it's
trying to
really,
modify.
yeah,
They're
and
trying
it's
to modify
very
people's brain.
convincing, and it's always by a Muslim person, like maybe, I'm sorry to say, but more than mainly by the Sufi, a very secular Sufi thinker. And so what happened, and you see this in history, by the way, many Sufi thinkers were ostracized in the Muslim world by Islamic thinkers because they're weak in society, they're weak in the thought, which is very powerful of Muslims. And some, yeah, but not some. Some are very good, okay, but some very influential Sufis were very, we believe to be very corrupt and not very good for the Muslim world. But the word kufar or kufar means this, it doesn't mean that. They use the word that. They look at the linguistic definition of kufar, which means to put a veil over one's heart, which is correct, okay, which is that's a linguistic definition. You can't deny that. That's what it means. It means to cover, kufr, which means cover. But there's a Sharia definition to kufar, and the so and the word kufar is the general term regarding anybody who rejects Islam or doesn't believe in Islam. Not just
Yeah.
reject, by the way, it doesn't believe.
Doesn't
The
believe.
difference
Yeah.
between rejecting, because a person, for example, could be Muslim and reject, doesn't mean a Jew and Christian reject because they don't believe in the first place. Do you understand?
Right.
And if a Muslim rejects one ayat of Quran, he becomes kafir. He believes in everything, but he rejects that ayat of Quran. Okay. Now that's a well-known Islamic principle gone for over 1,000 years. No one can disagree with this. So how can you say a Jew and Christian who don't believe in anything that Quran Sunnah is not a kafir? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it makes no rational sense.
So you're
But
doing kufr.
yeah. The word kufr, there are different types of kufr. There's Ahli Kitab, which
Yeah.
have a status higher than other kufr. There's murtad, person who's apostate. There's munafiqeen, who we don't know, which are the hypocrites. We don't know
Hypocrites.
who
Yeah.
they are, okay, because
Yeah.
they're hidden. And there's the other type of kuffar, which are the mushrikeen, the polytheists,
Mushriki.
whatever it could be, and their status is quite low in terms of the eyes of Allah.
So
And
they've.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but
So,
the Ahli Kitab are much higher. That's true, 100%. I'm not going to disagree with that. But in terms of the Sharia definition of kuffar, not only linguistic, the Sharia definition, there still are they're categorized as being kuffar. Even the linguistic definition, the veil of the heart, it applies to them because they see the truth. Islam's everywhere, but they reject it because they have a veil of their heart. So how can you say they're not kuffar? It doesn't make any rational sense. And it's very clever, the arguments. It's because what we've done is the Orientalists, they orientalized Arabic terminology, Arabic text. And so it's very hard for the average Muslim to counteract it. And so even some learning Muslims, they fall into this trap. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. He used this ayat Quran, he used this hadith, he used this Islamic, he used this. But if you look at the definitions in terms of these words from the classical scholars, because what happens is, alhamdulillah, do you know we have hadith? Narration to Prophet Muhammed okay, from Bukhari, Ahmad, Muslim, Tirmidhi, whatever it could be.
yeah.
Now, what we also have is classical scholars who define terminology in terms of dictionary. And so a lot of these scholars and scholars afterwards, in order to find the meaning of a word in the Quran, they have to go to the definition of the word. You could say the dictionary, the source. And there were certain very famous scholars, very famous learned ones who gave exact definitions of certain words, many of all the words in the Quran. Okay. And the word kufar is very clearly stated in classical sense is being anybody who doesn't follow Islam. Anybody who doesn't follow Islam. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean Jew and Christian only, or polytheist only, atheist only. It's anybody.
Anybody.
But then ulama say there's kuffar. Then there's different categories of kuffar.
Yeah.
Not there's ahli kitab and then there's kuffar. That doesn't
Mm.
make any sense, because if that's so, let's look now. They say this doesn't make any sense because we're looking at Arabic, we're not looking at English now. So okay, if
Yeah.
Ahl
All right.
Kitab were not kuffar, so in Arabic, what would you call them? Ahl
Mm.
Kitab. Yeah, but that Ahl Kitab is their status. Okay, people of the book. They're Muslim or non-Muslim. They're non-Muslim, so the non-believers. Yeah. So what's a non-believer? What's the Arabic for non-believer? It's kuffar. It
Kufar,
doesn't
yeah.
make any rational sense. Eventually, if you just forget the English language, if you just
Yeah.
follow the Arabic language, of course they're kuffar, okay?
Yeah.
And but how we treat them is completely different from maybe a mushrikeen in terms of taxes, okay, in terms of marriage, in terms of how we eat with them, praying in their places of worship, protecting their places of worship. So that's completely different, and that's hakam, okay? That's a different topic itself. But they all generally come in the category of kuffar. See,
Mm.
just look at the Arabic. See, if you just follow the Arabic, it's impossible to follow anything. It's impossible. It's the beauty of the Arabic language is it gives a definition for everything, and even in Arabic, there's a definition for what a definition is. It's so detailed, it's so airtight. It's a
Yeah.
fact that it's called. So you can't bring a word and say, "Actually, this is the meaning of this word." Is it? Let's find out. Let's reference it. Is that the actual meaning of the word? No one can do that. It's just so airtight. But the
Yeah.
Orientalists, they take a word and they twist the meaning, they give text to justify the meaning, and they present it under a Muslim disguise, Muslim name, and they convince many very moderate Muslims. And the
Yeah.
moderate Muslim will write an article in the Guardian, in the Times, or in the book, okay, and say this is actually what it means. And people get confused because people don't always have Islamic knowledge. So but if you look at the Sharia definitions and classical scholar definitions of these words, they think they're completely different. It's like a different religion altogether. What are these people talking about?
Yeah.
People need to verify information. It's very hard to do it if you don't have knowledge. And I can use Quran, I can use Ayat Quran to say that Prophet Muhammad was not the last messenger. The Ahmadis do that as well, the
Mm.
Qadianis. And so you can use anything you want to justify anything.
I
It's
mean, in regards to the Quran, you'd want to go back to Hadith to justify what you're saying as well. I mean, you
No,
won't just look
yeah. You go to Quran and the Hadith. The
yeah,
Hadith is elaboration of the Quran. They're not. Sometimes they can be on the same level. This is
yeah,
in the Sunni madhab. They can be on the same level if the Hadith is so airtight by certain scholars and it's completely and it's not and it's airtight. Then maybe it's in parallel with the Quran. But otherwise, it's not quite parallel with the Quran. But what happens at the Hadith, elaboration of the Quran? Without the hadith, we can't implement Islam because it'd be very difficult to implement
very
Islam.
different.
We,
Yeah,
we won't know what the ayat of Quran even mean, to be honest. We have to implement it like cut the hand of the thief. What does that mean? It's quite harsh. But
yeah,
if you look at the hadith, the implementation, you think, wait a minute, it's impossible to get the hand of the thief being cut off. It's almost impossible because it's a deterrent, it's not a punishment only. Because people can steal for many different reasons. There's no
yeah,
hudud, there's no cutting down the hand of thief Islamically. If they're poor, if there's a drought, if they steal from a government place, if they steal in an open place, there's no hudud. There's just punishment like jail or lashing or whatever it could be, or maybe they're ostracized from society. But the hudud is quite specific and it's very hard. It's almost impossible. That's why in the 1400 years of Islam, according to Islamic court texts of cases, there's only been like I think less than 1,000 actual hudud in 1400 years. And so it's very hard to get the hand. But now Saudi Arabia, they cut the hand of thief all the time, okay, because people are poor, they cut the hand of the thief. That's a different rule, but they're using religion obviously to keep themselves in power. That's why monarchies we don't accept, and an issue with democracies we don't accept as well, because there's a big misconception with the issue of democracy, because it comes from the Latin, it comes from the Greek, comes from the Greek, sorry,
mm,
Aristotle. It was an experiment. It was a democracy comes from a demonstration, doesn't it? So it's like it's a demonstration of power, and it was rejected by the founder because it didn't create any progress in society. It was rejected at the time when it was established, because people
yeah,
used to always argue over laws and wait for the majority opinion. They never used to progress. And if you look at the Western system, it's not a democratic system like they say.
mm,
You put somebody in power, For 4 years, he or she makes the law. You don't have a say in every single law, but
No.
democracy says you should have a say. And so, but we have voting in Islam. We vote for the Khalif, either by consensus or by shura, many different mechanisms. But voting isn't democracy. Voting is as a tool to implement democracy as it is today. But voting can be a tool to implement theocracy, to implement anything. In fact, it's just a tool. Like I could vote. Okay, should we go? Should we go on the number 6 bus or number 7 bus? Okay, that's not democracy because it's not putting sovereignty into the hands of mankind. Democracy is putting sovereignty of law into the hands of man. Voting is just a mechanism, nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. It's just a mechanism. So even the Muslims, even the Arabs, they have this thing called democratia. We have sure democratia, sure, sorry. So we
Mm.
have sure with democracy and they mix it together.
Mm.
That doesn't make any sense as well.
No.
It's an old Arab thing in the modern world, but no one follows it anymore just because it doesn't make any rational sense. You see, one of the biggest problems we have in Islam with implementation of Islam is Muslims, is not non-Muslims. Okay, because non-Muslims are a different part of the world. Okay, they're
Yeah.
coming by their armies. Okay, I agree. They occupy land. I agree, but they can't come in and occupy land unless the people give them ijazat, authority. Understand? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
impossible. Okay, so and with this, and what are the biggest obstacle we see are what we some people call jump but the moderate, the weak Muslims who have very limited knowledge of Islam, who are not confident in their religion, in their history, and it's not, some of it isn't their fault. They just don't know. You get two
Mm.
types. You get one who doesn't really know
Who doesn't
about
know?
enough
Yeah.
about Islam, and then they follow whatever is there to make themselves being accepted because they don't want to be not accepted in society because they can't
Yeah.
defend the concept. So therefore, let's
So
agree with
so
whatever
so
they
it's
say.
like so it's
Yeah.
like Muslims in UK. They have to follow what England or what the Parliament or whatever anyone says that are higher. They can't
Yeah.
literally say,
You see,
I follow another state because I am a Muslim.
no, it's not the issue of following the state, it's the issue of following the law. Okay,
Yeah.
because law is beyond the state. Okay, and state implements the law, but law we have for individuals as well. State
Yeah.
can't tell you to drink alcohol.
No.
You can't say I'm going to follow law of the land because I have to drink alcohol. Some
No.
parts of the world, in fact, they're going to implementing. There are groups and slowly they're trying to implement the old Spanish Inquisition laws. This might seem very extreme, and I was shocked when I've been investigating this. The Spanish Inquisition, when Spain conquered, sorry, when the Queen was it Queen Elizabeth of Spain? Was it
Mm.
Queen Elizabeth of Spain? Um, anyway, in 1492, when Spain was conquered by the Christians and Islamic Khilafah rule was taken away from Spain, there are many thousands of Jewish people and Christian people living in Spain, and they couldn't leave, they couldn't move. So what the Inquisition did is they forcefully converted them to Islam, so to Christianity,
Mm.
and those who didn't convert, they had to pay taxes. But eventually, they were banished anyway. They were all banished, or forcefully converted. Now, people who said they converted to Christianity because they didn't want a persecution, they wanted to keep their jobs. Obviously, they didn't want to be kicked out of their houses and be ostracized and be
Mm.
oppressed. The Inquisition would make laws like they would have to prove that they were not Muslim, but they would have to drink wine and eat pork openly in front of whoever knocked from the government who knocked on the door. Understand?
Yeah.
Now these are extreme laws, but these things are being implemented slowly in some parts of the world. In China, with the yin yang, with the Muslims in China,
Mm.
and what's that area called? I forgot what it's called here. What's that area called in China? I forgot. Xinjiang. Um, that's what's happening there. They're being forced to do something which is against their belief to show that they're not alike, have any allegiance to their belief. In France, it's happening slowly as well. There's some
So
laws
this
being
day and
implemented.
age.
Yeah. In Denmark as well, they're trying to implement certain laws related to that to an extent to prove that Muslims are secular. They're not following Islam too much, or whatever it could be. And these are coming back slowly. Now many Muslims will be afraid of this and follow whatever they be told to follow because they're scared and they don't have knowledge. But the thing is, knowledge is power, and if
Yeah.
you're
Indeed.
confident about your belief, and you can counteract the belief of society and give a solution. It's not the issue of saying that you're wrong, because that's silly and that's very reactionary, just to say he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't say the person's wrong, and you need to give a solution. And the purpose of dawah, I mentioned the Quran very clearly how to give dawah, and the principles and the tafsir of the ayat of Quran and dawah is basically to take an argument in society, counter and expose it, counteract it, and give a
Yeah.
solution.
Contract. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the idea is to drive the emotion of the other party, whether it's groups of people, whether it's a state, whether it's
Voice.
an individual, to
Voice.
drive emotion inside them. If there's
Yeah.
no emotion driven inside them, it's not dawah, because that means they're not
Mm.
feeling anything, which is the truth. They're gonna go to you as one thing, go back away from you as the same thing, because it's just words, it's just
Because
speech.
they've not been,
Yeah,
they've
you
not
got to
had any
drive.
evidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to
Yeah.
drive some emotion, and so if you've got knowledge and then you can counteract and you can become strong, you become more confident, and you're not going to follow these Orientalist attacks and these weak, moderate Sufi ways of thinking and the Orientalist ways of thinking. You'd be more confident in your approach, and you'd be very surprised. Why do you think many people come to Islam? It's because they themselves have come across Muslims who drove their emotion, and they've rejected certain beliefs of which they followed before.
Yeah.
Even non-Muslims, if you go to any aspect, okay, if you say, for example, democracy is wrong, many non-Muslims don't believe in democracy. They say it's completely wrong because they come from their mind and they openly say it's wrong. If you
Yeah.
say kingship is wrong, many non-Muslims say kingship is wrong. If you say alcohol is wrong, many non-Muslims don't drink alcohol, say it's really bad for society. People already agree. Some people already agree with what Islam says, but the person's weak will think, "Oh, I have to accept and I have to agree. They have to agree with me. I have to agree with them. Therefore, let's just compromise and be happy." And
Yeah.
you and their judgment, it's a bit dodgy, because we are in a non-Muslim society, and we have to be. We're not the best example. We are weak, but whatever small thing we do should reflect upon your belief and to show
Yeah.
that you've got confidence.
Yeah.
Because individually, people are always going to be sinful. Mankind was created sinfully. Okay,
Simple. Yeah.
not created simply. Mankind by nature do sins, because that's how we are weak, and Allah made us weak. But when you take that sin and you openly publicize it, let me give you an example. You get many Muslims who sell alcohol.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
many Pakistanis. There's one of them on the corner, Pakistani shop. You've got Bismillah Rahman Rahim, and he's got all this whiskey underneath Bismillah Rahman Rahim.
Yeah. No. No. I've not. I
And
know.
I I found that very offensive. Now the thing is if you go to any Jewish person, you're not going to have his Torah and then pork underneath selling pork and say, "Oh, I have
No.
to," because at least
Because
Jews.
they follow their
Yeah,
religion at
the
that
obvious,
extent.
they've got confidence in their religion, even though they're a
Confident. Yeah.
minority of society and they've been heavily persecuted wherever they are in the world. But the thing is, they cling on to their belief, not the secular Jews like the
Because
Zionists.
they do that. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
they
because
do that. Yeah.
they're confident in what they believe. Now, if you drink alcohol individually, secretly in your house, that's between you and Allah. May Allah forgive you. Understand? If you do tawbah, whatever it could be, maybe for many reasons you're drinking alcohol, and it's between you and Allah. But if you go in society and start selling it, it's a million times worse because you're promoting it.
Yeah.
Understand? So anything
Yeah.
that you do that promotes, okay, say you do zina, okay, adultery, fornication,
Mm.
secretly, wherever it could be, people are weak. But if you go out and start promoting homosexuality, start promoting, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree, I don't care. What happens is you're promoting it, and then that's a different issue. Then you've
Mm.
exposed yourself, and that sin is a different level altogether. And you shouldn't get to that state. And many Muslims, not many, but quite a few Muslims who are weak have got to that state where they're promoting something which is against their belief. Okay, if you want to follow it individually, but
Because
don't
they don't
promote it.
find solace in the religion.
They don't find solace because
No.
because of the fact they don't have knowledge in the religion. And it's
Yeah.
not the shit they don't find solace. It's like they're just ignorant of the religion. That's what it is. These people never have sukoon anyway. They never have
Mm.
peace. Because
Yeah.
what happens if you don't follow anything, if you're in the middle of the road, you're going to get run over. Either you're the left or you're the right.
Yeah.
And so you need to
So yeah,
show
it's
where
like
you are.
literally
Yeah,
something might attract them to
yeah,
something else.
yeah. Because if you say, for example, things which are anti-Islam, okay, against Islam, against the pretenders of Islam, quite clearly, and in order to make people happy, You know, the non-Muslims, okay, with respect, they're not going to respect you because they know that you've compromised. You know, you're one of us, yeah, you create, or you follow, yeah, you're one of us, isn't it? Yeah, you're one of the boys, yeah, you drink, oh, you do this
Mm.
and that. But they're not going to respect you inside their hearts because at the end of the people always respect people who have conviction. Like I respect some people, and this might sound extreme. I'm not saying I am. There's
Mm.
some far right people who I have some respect for, not because I like the far right because it's anti-Islamic completely, you know, the concept of a division of skin color, but they have conviction of what they believe, and because they have conviction, you feel wow, and they're going against society. You know, they're quite strong in what they believe. It's just that if you have conviction, I respect some Christians who have conviction in their religion and they go out and they demonstrate against homosexuality, LGBT immorality, society because they're following their religion, and we respect them. Muslims, we respect them. There's no doubt that, but we do respect people
Mm.
of the book who follow their religion, you know, against in the secular society because we know how it feels, and we can relate to them a lot more. They can relate to us a lot more. We have a mutual understanding, and then
Yeah.
when we differ, we can debate, we can discuss, and move forward. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But a person who's wishy-washy doesn't believe in anything, or believes in whatever, like the wind goes with the wind, you know, a leaf in the wind. You
Yeah.
can't have a common ground with that person.
No.
No, not here, not that party or this party will respect that person because they're wishy-washy.
Yeah.
And there was a case, and there was a really good many years ago. Someone told me this is the true story. This is really quite shocking. Not shocking, but it made me think. And when I was first coming to Islam, um, there was a person who went for a job as I think it was a lawyer. It was no, it was a solicitor in a big massive law
Mm.
firm. Okay, and they interview all these different candidates, and you know, in the interview, people reject, they accept, and there was one Muslim, and they asked him about his religion, and he said, "Yeah, I'm Muslim, but I don't follow Islam. I do drink, you know, I do believe Islamic law is in the past. We
Yeah.
don't need to follow Islam in this, that, the other." And, you know, he got rejected. He was very intelligent, but he got rejected. And they
Mm.
told him why they rejected him as well at the time. And it's quite out because he mentioned it. And the reason why they rejected him is because it's that if you can't be faithful and sincere to your own belief, how could you be trusted with us?
Yeah. No, true. Is
Because people respect people who have conviction. Now,
conviction.
when you follow Islam, there's no contradiction, there's no clash between
No.
other people, because Islam's it's a very wide circle. It's not a tiny. It's a very wide
No.
circle. It
Right.
encompasses
Yeah.
many things. Islam is not Judaism. Judaism is very strict, and Judaic law is very strict in terms of food, in terms of many things, aspects of their lives. Islam came to liberalize Judaism. That's why we can eat almost anything we want. I mean, obviously, apart from pork, okay,
Yeah.
that's forbidden, and
As
as
long
long
as
as it's
halal.
halal
Yeah.
within the context. But we're not really that strict in Muslims in terms of food. It's very open, but the
Mm.
Judaic law is actually extremely strict. You can't mix fish with dairy products, meat with dairy products. There's an entire law when it comes to just the issue of food, and they
Mm.
exaggerate on their laws. And when Islam came, we can marry people who are non-Muslims. Okay, we can divorce. Many religions before, in Christianity of old, you couldn't divorce.
Sorry,
Uh,
you said who can marry non-Muslims?
Muslims can marry number, but many religions before people couldn't marry outside their faith. So we can marry Jews and Christians as long as they're sincere. There's conditions attached to that. You can't just say, "Oh, Barbara, I like you. Met you in the club. Oh, you look great, don't you? Yeah, I want to marry you. Are you Christian? Yeah, I've got a cross in yeah." And she's not, she's not very covering herself very well.
So wait,
Or
you can marry a non-Muslim.
well, yeah, in Islamic, well, there's conditions attached to this, but they're
What
general.
conditions?
She has to be um, she has to be Ahli Kitab, people of the book, Jew or Christian, and she has to be following her religion sincerely.
So she
They
has to follow her religion.
have to be
Say
following her.
say if I get married to a non-Muslim
Yeah,
and she follows Christianity in a like a proper way, and then we
yeah.
have kids. Yeah,
Mm.
what the kids gonna follow?
You see, the kids have to follow Islam. That's one of the conditions as well. And that has to be an agreement before you marry. You can't lie to the person before you can't
Well,
deceive
I
people.
thought no, I thought if you find if you have a non-Muslim, you have to literally convince them or teach them about Islam because at the end of the day, you want your
Yeah, you want
partner
that
to be.
tranquility, man. Yeah,
You want your partner to be Muslim because you want to take
yeah,
hand to Jannah.
yeah. You see, ideally that would be the case, but love is love. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so Islam says, okay, if you want to follow someone, okay, love is a very dangerous concept, by the way. It's very disaster. It can be a
Yeah,
disaster because you
I think it's I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
dangerous in this life now.
yeah, no, because you could say love for many different things, okay, and then go on the wrong path. It can be very like a drug. It can be very dangerous as well. But
Lethal.
yeah, but there are, but Islam. That's what I'm saying. Islam has that option. It has the option. Not many people take the option, and it's not recommended, by the way, take the option because you need to have tranquility and religion and deen inside the house as well. And so that's going to have issues as well. I'm saying if that situation arises, me personally, I think the times of old, that situation would have been better under Islam. In times of now, it's harder because we live in the non-Islam. So you're more likely to be dragged into non-Islam than the Muslim being non-Muslim being dragged into Islam if they
Yeah.
agree to live under Islam, non-Islam. So it's more difficult nowadays. But anyway, that's a different topic for
Yeah.
scholars, and I don't want to talk about this. But it's not as people think. I can just marry anybody who. Oh, you're a Christian, yeah. Oh, I'm going to marry you.
Yeah.
It's
No.
absolutely there was a string of conditions attached. It's like saying I
Mm,
can marry four wives. Yeah, you can, but there are conditions.
mm.
You can't, you got to be physically able to marry four wives. Marry one wife for some people is hard enough, but physically able and financially able to marry four.
Financially,
Financially,
I think it's all about.
financial,
I think it's all.
actually, I can't say that. That's wrong because we know the hadith of Rasulullah when it comes to issue marrying. Sometimes, you can marry more to get rich. Okay, sometimes you get rich, you can be poor, you can marry have more than one wife, as
Mm,
long as you have an agreement of your limit. This is what I can provide. This is what I cannot provide, and she agrees. Okay, and she's happy with that. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But in terms of materially intimacy, in terms of time, it's got to be divided equally. You can't put one wife over the other, and that causes resentment and arguments inside the house.
yeah.
But that's a different topic as well.
Yeah.
And to be honest, 90% of Muslims around the world only have one wife anyway. That's only some have more who are able, and in respect to people who can have more than one wife, they're more capable, as long as they're just and equal to their
Yeah.
wife. So there's conditions for everything in Islam. You can't just say, "Oh, I can do that." Yeah, you can't really just do that. Okay, you can eat pork in Islam. Yeah, I mean, there's conditions attached to that. If you're dying, there's no other meat in the world. Okay, only enough to just to survive doesn't mean you can eat pork. There's condition to everything in Islam.
Yeah. It's everything. You're referring back to the Quran.
I think within its limit. So going back to the issue of the rule of law, and I mean we if you don't follow the rule of Allah, you're going to get chaos in society. Now the chaos itself isn't like a chaos immediate. It's like a switch on off. You've got to understand this. Okay, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is the infinite being. He's been around for infinite time. For 10,000 years in our lifetime, in Earth, whatever, it's nothing to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala.
No.
So if you don't follow the rule of law, rule of Quran, what happens is the decay happens to us over a long period of time. To Allah, it's nothing. Okay, because Allah always gives you a chance to come back, chance to come back, chance to come back,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's by a natural disaster. Sometimes it's by a natural disaster. Okay, sometimes it's by um, you doing something and you becoming ill and you regret what you've done. Okay, there are
Yeah.
many. If you look at, for example, the way liberalism is going in society with the family system, um, it's going to destroy the Western culture. It's going to destroy Western heritage because what's going to
Mhm.
happen is if women are not having kids, if society doesn't want to have kids, um, if society doesn't want to follow the natural order of marriage of family, what's going to happen? It's going to lead to many secondary, third, fourth class problems, which people are going to regret afterwards.
Yeah.
And even in the West, I mean, one of the reasons why the far right is rising so much is because they see so many non-whites within their society. Now, the thing is, we're not responsible for the decline in birth rate in the West. One, it's their alcohol, it's their drugs, it's their lifestyle, and secondly, it's their way of thinking. It's completely wrong. Because if you have everything, you've got hedonism, you can enjoy yourself. Anything you get bored, you get bored of this, you're going to try this,
Yeah.
and so people try because they have everything. So they try everything, and then what's happening? The birth rate in I think it's 2.1 for an ethnicity, a group of people, for them to carry on with their tribe, with their with their ethnicity.
Yeah.
They've got to have like 2.1 children. In the West, it's 1.6, 1.5. It's going down because they're not reproducing enough, apart from maybe one or two countries in the West, which and they're coincident, like Ireland and Poland, which are more Christian and more traditional. Think
Yeah.
of, okay, and so when Islam comes, we tell them, look, what you're doing is completely wrong. And they hate the Muslims. They hate the Muslims because we're having kids. So they're trying to enforce their corruption upon the Muslims. And the Muslims are following the moderate Muslims. Oh, we don't need to do this. Or we should accept that. And if the parents accept something which is immoral, it reflects on the kids. The kids accept it more, and then their
Mm.
kids will accept it more. And it's going
More.
to come
Yeah.
to a point where my great grandfather, he said this. It was so stupid, wasn't it? It was so stupid because we now me,
Yeah.
I can go with Steve and Bob. We're a couple. But thing is, it's all it's going to be completely declined, and it's coming. And so it has a knock-on effect, like a ripple, like a storm. And many people, a lot of really good philosophers and thinkers in the West. There are some really good ones to say, look, you might enjoy what you're doing now, but you're living for the day. Like if a woman says, I can do whatever I want, I don't need to have kids. Okay, it's my body, my choice. I can abort whenever I want. Okay, go ahead. But the thing is, for tomorrow and your society, it's a disaster because if your women are not reproducing, you're going to go down. You have to have non-whites or other people coming into your society to replenish your society in order to boost up the economy. And if you don't have one of the things of society is population, if you don't have population, you need the population from outside to give you population. And so
But isn't the population increasing now?
the
Is it the,
population,
isn't why they've come out with the with all this thing about COVID and everything, killed off a lot of people because they wanted to reduce the population?
these are conspiracy theories. Don't even believe in conspiracy theories. It's a disease. Okay, it's a virus.
Yeah.
There've been thousands of viruses throughout the whole
Yeah.
human.
No, there's been a lot. Yeah.
Much worse. Look at the Spanish plague that
Yeah.
wiped out half of Europe. Are you going to say
Yeah.
that was a Freemasonic Illuminati conspiracy to wipe out the population? No,
Mm.
it's stupid because people don't believe in anything. People don't believe in something. Believe in everything. That's a very common saying.
Yeah.
And you find that these people are very superstitious, very into conspiracies because they're ignorant. They don't understand how society works. Society is a lot simpler than what people believe it to be. A lot simpler, but people make it complicated. If you got a scientific principle to prove God doesn't exist, there's a billion scientific principles very clever to prove that God doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, all they're trying to say is something came from nothing, and that's irrational. So how can
Yeah.
something come from nothing? There's a design. You've got and why is everything so organized, so well designed, so
Yeah.
so meticulously worked together? There's nothing with the universe that can make itself. Energy can't make itself. Simple argument destroys all the complicated arguments. Now
Yeah.
then you have Marvel and all these cartoons, multi-universe, try to propagate these scientific so-called facts, but theories to confuse the mind even more. But at the end of the day, it's all one simple argument: either
Yeah.
God exists or doesn't exist. Okay, if
Yeah.
it doesn't exist, who created everything? Who designed everything? Or okay, by chance, it didn't happen by chance. So if it happened by chance, chance create chance. If you do something by chance, it creates chaos. Chaos doesn't create order, and nothing within the universe creates itself anyway. So it doesn't make
No.
any sense. It's an irrational. It's a completely irrational argument. But
Yeah.
these arguments are because they know they're irrational. That's why I keep up to date with all these Stephen Hawking's, all these different theories, and I'm telling you, it's shocking, absolutely shocking. What is believed today in science? Of this is actually we've proven this. A week later, it's been disproven. Wait a minute, it
Mm.
was correct before. Now it's been disproven. What? Because science is fluid. Science is always investigating, but you're only trying to investigate the ignorant because that's what you're trying to do. Because you're always trying to investigate away from the truth. So you're going to get many different theories. You're trying to confuse people. It's like a layer cake, a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer, and there's so many different layers that to get to the truth, you've got to fight each layer. It's better just to put this to one side and just discuss it rationally, openly. Does God
Yeah.
exist?
Yeah.
Is the Quran is the Quran the book system book of the Creator? And rationally, this is a different video, and it's very easy to prove all these concepts.
Yeah.
And so, even with the Christians, we're very disheartened with the Christian. Don't forget, don't think the West think, oh, Islam and Christianity, Muslims come in here, they're attacking Christianity. We've never attacked Christianity in the West. I mean, in terms of what we see and what people blame us for, because of the fact that where are the Christians? The
Mm.
churches are empty. Where are
Yeah.
Christian morals? When you see an LGBT flag, okay, on top of a cathedral, which I saw a few months ago, massive LGBT flag on top of a cathedral, which is like the center building of Christendom in the area, okay,
Trying to promote.
yeah, the thing is, where are the Christians? That's got nothing to do with Muslims. Your secular order under capitalism has destroyed your religion, but you're using the Muslims as an scapegoat. Muslims are going to bring you back into God, but into the
Mm.
correct way, okay, into the pure monastetic way, okay, not the way that you've diverged yourself over so many hundreds of years ago. And then people say, or Christianity's been here for hundreds of years. Who the heck are these people? Thousands of years. Who the heck are these people? Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense because paganism existed in this country, in Britain, for 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Christianity came within 200 years. The entire Christian country was Christian. So time has got nothing to do with how long you were in disbelief. Christians have been just less than 2,000 years in ignorance and misunderstanding. Some are very sincere, and they're the ones that we do respect a lot, okay?
Mm.
But many of them just completely silly. They don't make any sense. They're just blind faith. They don't know what they believe themselves, and they're very argumentative and very aggressive towards Muslims. But thing is, you can change.
Yeah.
If you wake up with one religion, go to bed with different religions by saying a few words, you can change completely. And
Yeah.
Islam and Christianity both came from the East. So don't think like some of the neo Nazis or the neo fascists or Christianity is a white, Western religion, Christianity. No, really, Christianity came from the Middle East. Judaism came from the Middle East. Islam came from the Middle East. So all these religions have fallen to your lands. And it's by fact, when Christianity came to Europe, people said at that time, this fact, okay, people said at the time it's a foreign religion coming from that part of the world. Just like they say Islam is coming, it's a foreign religion coming from that part. It's just because we're a bit brown in our skin, okay? Our food's a bit spicy, some of us, okay? We think,
Yeah.
oh, it's completely foreign. But color of the skin has got nothing to do with it. The
No.
Romans, okay, one all white, by the way. The many of them were brown, some of them were black, okay? And so that's a big, but majority
Yeah.
of them were white. So because they were white, it's easy to accept white for white because of racism, or they were white, it's a white man religion, therefore we should accept it. But Jesus wasn't white.
No.
He was Aramaic. He was born from a Jewish family.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, even in the Bible, it describes him as being bronze skinned. What does bronze skin mean? Does it mean, like you see the half naked Jesus on the cross in church is pure pale white? Forget white, pale white,
Mm.
blue eyes, blondish hair. Jesus wasn't that. He
No.
didn't even come from that part of the world. And if he was that and he came from that part of the world, that would be a miracle by itself. You look so different from any of us. Where did you come from? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So all this is just racism, all the using Christianity, whatever it could be. We need to look at the truth. The
Yeah.
truth, Islam came after Christianity and after Judaism as a final message for the whole of humanity. And we can prove that rationally. But anyway, go back to the issue of rulership, like you said, kingship before. We don't accept kingships in Islam anywhere
Yeah.
in the world. Whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim, we don't accept it. We accept only the rule of the Khalif under the system called Khilafah, which doesn't really exist in the world today. And when it did, it was a body, it was a beacon for the whole of humanity. Look at people. There was a Jewish person, Israeli parliament. He gave a speech in the 1970s. It was to the Arabs. No, it wasn't. Sorry, it was in the UN. It wasn't in Israel. And he said to the Arabs, "Stupid." Sorry, okay. The ignorant Arab leaders, he said to them, you talk about us oppressing Arabs, okay, the Palestinians. I want to ask you one question. Where are the Jews in your country?
Yeah.
And all the Arabs were like, they couldn't answer the question
No.
because there's very few Jews in the Arab world. Now, the thing is, if they had any ilm inside them, any voice inside them, they'd easily counteract the argument. For
Yeah. They would have. They
1400
would have.
years under Islam, when Islam was implemented under one ruling system, when there were no countries, when
Yeah.
Islam had power, Jews were scattered throughout the whole of the Muslim world. And according to Jewish historians, the golden era of the Jews was Spain, under Islamic Spain, not Christian Spain, because they were kicked out and oppressed forced to convert to Catholic religion. But under Islam, Jews thrived so much under Islam because there were people of the book and they were good with they had certain skills which we benefited from. There's no doubt about that. There's evidence for that as well. And so wait a minute, it's under Arab nationalism that kicked the Jews out, not under Islam. And it wasn't just Arab nationalism, it was Israel. When it was created, it sent out a decree to all Jews in the Arab world. You have to emigrate to Israel, otherwise you will not be able to go into Jerusalem, into the holy sites, and the Jewish way of worship, again, the Wailing Wall. There were Bantu coming from there; they'll be ostracized. So they were forced to leave. The Jews in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Algeria, they fled not because of Islam. One is because of Arab nationalism, which is very dirty, very racist. Secondly, it's because Israel needed population. They couldn't get population from the Arabs. The European Jews had very little population, especially because of the Holocaust. Okay, so they had to get it from the Arabs, and the Arab Jews didn't want to leave because they've been in that area of the world for thousands of years. But they
Yeah.
had to leave because of the fact that Israel forced them to leave. That was the reason why there's very few Jews in the Arab world, not because of Islam. Islam was protecting the Jews, and in fact, there were many cases in the Islamic history where Jews were attacked, and the Muslim armies had to protect it. The Holocaust was just one actually, but when the Holocaust happened, we didn't have a Khilafah, so the Jews didn't have any way under Islam to be protected. But there were many instances before Jews in Europe were heavily attacked. In fact, the Jews in Europe were very heavily attacked. They couldn't own land or property. The names that they used to be called were disgusting names, and we would never use these terminologies because of the
Yes.
respect
That's
we
why.
have. Because of
That's
the
why
respect we
Jews
have,
are.
we have
Yeah.
for people of the book. And so the racism of Jews, the persecution of Jews was heavy in Europe during the time of Islam. That's why a lot of they emigrated to the Muslim world. Not all of them did, but a lot of them did emigrate to the Muslim world. And then we know what happened during the Inquisition. It was a disaster for the Jews and Muslims. And so the history of Christianity is quite cruel. But they say the history of Islam is cruel. Islam fought against a man. It fought against an army to implement Islam, and then people, if they wanted to convert, it was their problem. It was their solution. It was their choice. Like the Balkans, when Islam came into the Balkans, it was hundreds of years before the majority of Balkans became Muslim in some parts. In fact, many parts, people remain Christianity even to today. Greece was part of the Khilafah, but majority of Greece was staunch Orthodox Christian. So where's the conversion of Islam? 80% of India, Hindu, it was called, was under Islam, was Hindu. 80% of it. How could 20% rule over 80%? It's impossible even to do it by force. It's because people agreed with the system of law under Islam. They agreed with it. It made sense to them. The law of the land.
Yeah.
And the law of the land in Arabic is called Dawla Anwa, called the Hanifi. Now, the Muslims misinterpret it. They say we should obey the law of the land. Now, that was for non-Muslims living under Islam. Because you can't say to a non-Muslim, you need to follow the laws of Islam because they don't believe in Islam. They follow the law of the land. Dawla Anwa.
Other land. Yeah.
And the
I
law
guess
of the land,
majority of people are
it
doing that.
protected them from everything. Because the non-Muslims have to be protected under Islam, and they have to be protected. So the thing is, even now, Muslims not protected. They have all these Muslims, we were West, we know, but you're not protecting Muslims because Muslims being persecuted throughout, they've been attacked throughout under freedom of speech. Their religion's been. We would never attack Christianity or Judaism. We will never hear anything negative because we're not allowed to do it because we're limited because we believe in aspects of Christianity, but even we just wouldn't do it because it's just so disrespectful. But they can say whatever they want for Islam. Now they're having laws in Denmark where they want. It's very barbaric laws where they want to separate Muslim families or whatever it could be. In France, they're having very barbaric laws where they have to have a spy in every single mosque in France to listen to what the sermon of the imam, see what they're saying. If they say anything which the liberal France doesn't like, which goes against French culture, it's the mosque will be shut down. The Inquisition's happening again, but it's creeping in slowly.
So it's like all the Muslims that are in France, they're staying there, and it's like a prison for them.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, it's Muslims are saying, why do you think so many French Muslims are coming to UK and going back home, back into the Middle East? Because they say, I've met many, so look, France is very oppressive. They all talk about these very fanciful terms, égalité, liberté, and all these really fancy. See, the French language is very fanciful compared to
Mm.
many of the European languages. And so they're able to paint a very nice picture using language, but behind the language is so much oppression and so
Yeah,
much.
it's pressure. It is.
It's just language hiding tyranny and oppression. That's all it is, nothing else, and we
Yeah.
feel it. And that's why Muslims, we need to unite and call for some kind of a,
So what do you think might happen in the next 10 years?
people asked this question 10 years ago.
What do you think? What's your opinion on,
Not me.
on,
I've heard this question and been asked by in mosques, but the I think the way the society is going, all these systems are man-made
Do you think
laws.
it's going downhill? Do you think it's going
Well, do you
downhill?
know capitalism has had its day? The idea of capital being the basis of life um, is a facade. Now people
Mm.
realizing it, rich again and richer, poor again and poorer.
Yeah,
Societies
yeah.
are you're going to get anarchy in the world. I mean, they're doing the very best to keep states stable, but they're always chasing a tail. That's what they're trying to do, and that creates more conflict and more conflict and more conflict and more conflict. It's going to come to a point where it's all going to crumble. There's only so much you can do, and people will
Mm.
wake up and they will unite under Islam. There's no doubt about it. Even though in the West, the fastest growing belief system is Islam, and it's not against, and it's always doctors, lawyers, females in particular. Majority of converts to Islam, 60% of females. Why is that? All the attack against Islam regarding women. It's all the facade. It's all the lies. There's something called a big lie, and
Mm.
the big lie is perpetuated by the state because state has to have tools of propaganda. Every system in the world has to have propaganda to protect its institutions. It has to have that. There's no doubt about it. It has to have it. And so the state of the propaganda in the media, in the papers, in TV shows, in cartoons, in films, is always against Islam and Muslims. And it has to be because they can't allow this system to take over the society by individually by the mass, because it will destroy the capitalistic order. And one interesting thing out of cartoons, I've just read yesterday. It was a Guardian newspaper, and they had Marvel. No, the Holly was it Marvel?
Marvel,
No. Who makes cartoons? Marvel.
Marvel, and
Who
the
makes cartoons? Pixar. No, it's American one. It's one of the Disney.
Disney.
Yeah.
Disney. Yeah, sorry.
Now, in the last 20 years, they said 400. This was a number. I mean, this is a 494 portrayals where Arabs have been used in characters. Only 19 have been actually positive. The
Yeah.
rest have been very derogatory, very negative.
Mm.
And so this isn't in Hollywood, but in cartoons as well. So it makes you think. So people, when they grow up, what they're going, if their happiness is TV, is cinema, what they're going to see, what they're going to the information and the video I gave a few weeks ago about thought, the previous information. Now you ask them, what do you think a Muslim is? Or
What their process, right, when they're
yeah,
young,
yeah,
when they
yeah.
watch Disney.
And they're attacking it whilst they're young. If you look at the LGBT community, why do you think they use a rainbow? Rainbow for the whole of society, for many different societies for thousands of years has been the symbol of kids. It's a fact. In Arab culture, they have rainbow. There's a name for it, but they give it a very different term. Okay, but the thing is, it's always there. It's been around for 100,000 years for all societies. Rainbow because it's something nice,
Mm.
something colourful. Why do you think they
Yeah.
use it? LGBT community using rainbow? It's because it's trying to attract the youth. It's trying to, and even some of their terminology, even some of their symbolism is very kid orientated. Because of the fact they want to, if they think if you can corrupt the kids, the youth, to make it through cartoons to accept everything, when they grow up, they're going to become more acceptable to these things. But they're only going to destroy their society. Eventually, it's all going to crumble because
Yeah.
even now there are people who thinkers who realize when what's happening is completely wrong. So it's amongst themselves, there's a lot clash, and you might find that people amongst non-Muslims they're always going to fight each other because of the fact that there's so many different ideas and thoughts, and some of them so extreme and bizarre that people who are intelligent amongst their society are going to counteract it anyway. even amongst the LGBT community, there's a split now between LGB and LGBTQ, because they're saying how you can't be T and LGBT. There's a big court case going on in London now, about what is, I don't want to say, but what is lesbian, because of the fact that they can't say a transvestite can be a lesbian, because how can a man be? But anyway, this is, it's crazy.
Mm.
It's like it's like I'm making it up. It's like I woke up into a different time. But this is fact. This is what's happening now. This is what they've
This
been
is
able
how
to,
it's going. This is how it's
because
going on.
they've traveled this road. It doesn't make any rational sense. They can't rationalize something which is not rationable. So they have
No,
to.
like you said,
So,
they're
so there's
targeting.
degrees
Yeah,
of less rationality, degrees of more rationality. All
yeah,
of it is completely corrupt in the first place. Islam's very clear. That's why people respect Islam, because it's clear. A lot of Christians and a lot of non-Muslims respect Islam, because they say, look, at least Islam's clear. It's that this is wrong, this is right.
yeah. I
Simple as
mean,
that.
like you said, you think that people that are turning to
Yeah.
Islam, and then they'll counteract that, and they'll try fighting those people as well.
Because
At the end of the day, people are trying to,
there's a TikTok video. I don't even
yeah,
seen it. Okay, it's like Zoom, and it's got all these different people, all part of the LGBTQ community, singing
mm,
song. Okay, and
yeah,
you know what the song title is? This is shocking. What the thing, the theme of the
go on,
song, the main chorus of the song,
go on.
"We're coming after your children," and with a big smile, "We're coming after your children. We're coming after your children," and it's a song designed to attack the heterosexual community. We're going to
Mm,
get your children. And I'm not making this up. Trust me, it's there. It's a very happy video. We're coming after your children. At the end, there's a person, a spokesperson who speaks over all their voices. And he says, and he gives a speech. And part of the speech was, you think we're gonna corrupt your children? You think that we're gonna turn your children against you? You think we're gonna make your children into part of our community? And the big smile at the end saying, "Well, you think correct because we are." And it's a very famous person actually, is representative of that community. It was on TikTok and it was going everywhere, and people were like, "Wow, shocked." And there's all these people liking it because people, what can they do?
What can the families do now? Send their kids to the school and
You know,
think that they're not gonna get taught about something, whereas they
you know,
might.
families can protest. That's true. There's no law saying that they have to accept it. But but as long as we teach your children at home what is right and what's wrong, and then
No, but
that's
then out there, their friends. We obviously understand that kids they listen. They don't listen to the parents. They listen to their
but you're not
friends.
in a society where kids don't ever listen to the parents. The parents can't teach them anything. That's complete.
Yeah,
Then
they
they get
listen to their friends. They won't
yeah.
listen to their brothers, the sisters, the mum,
But
the
if you
dad.
have a good family structure, okay, and you have a good belief system, and you can convince children, then what happens? They listen to the parents without any problem whatsoever. And
Yeah,
in the Christian society, one of the problems that they have is they don't have a good, strong belief. They don't really believe in their religion firmly, and their family structures are quite chaotic, quite at the time, to say the least. And so, whatever they're taught in school is what they're taught, and
mm,
there's nothing to counteract it because that's the source of knowledge and belief. And the society and the government knows this as well. And this is what they're trying to stop with the Muslims having that influence amongst to their kids. There's going to be laws passed um,
yeah,
not allowing Muslims to have too much influence over the kids, and questioning all of this. And now the Muslim families are being questioned a lot because the kids have said, "I don't agree with that." Then and now the phone was being taken away from their family, put in care homes because almost. But in some parts of Europe, they actually do get put into care homes if the kid. This is oppression. What the Jews went through during the time just before Nazism
yeah,
actually fully came to power. Muslims are going through that in a very subtle way, and unfortunately, the moderate Muslims are feeding this, are really heavily feeding this, but they don't know that they are feeding this. And the Orientalist attack against Islam is feeding this is encouraging this as well. It's like a frog being put into boiling water, being put into water. Now, if you turn the heat up, the frog doesn't feel it as long as it's slow enough and it boils alive. You cook
mm,
a frog by boiling it alive; it doesn't move, and that's what's happening to Muslims. They've been boiled alive, but they don't realize it. But there is some good news out there because there are people who are quite aware on these issues.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
But
so
it's not
the
yet.
moral, yeah, so the moral, I mean, the gist of the entire argument, you asked about the moral. I didn't want to talk about the Queen because she's passed away. Okay, and why would I want to talk about Queen? Okay, so the so the intermonarchy system is not allowed in Islam. Democracy is not allowed in Islam when it comes to democracy, rule of law by man, because you can't give siyada sovereignty to human beings. Humans make laws. What's halal today is haram tomorrow. What was allowed so many years ago in the Western nations now not allowed, and
It's
soon
not.
paedophilia is going to 100% be allowed. 100% is going that way with organizations or things which I've heard. Now there's a new term for paedophilia. Do you know what it is? Have you heard the
But
new term for paedophilia? It's called MAPS.
maps.
Yeah, um, there are societies who say, and these are some of these. I saw one of the representatives that was really like it was. I don't know, it was a girl or a boy. I couldn't even tell. It was really strange looking person and pushing forward for this, and it's happening now slowly. Where I'll try and get the name of the person. It was this strange person. Um, there's a lot calling someone the paedophilia is offensive, and it makes them and it's hurtful. So they're changing the term maps to maps. It has it's an acronym for something. I can't remember what it is. I'll try and get it for you. And I was like, what the heck? I was watching it. It was one of the news channels, and
Mm.
it said we shouldn't be using the word pedophilia. We should be using maps instead because it's offensive. And then there's another argument now, which is available by these thinkers, is maybe what's wrong with having sex with children, because of the fact that if they consent to it, it shouldn't matter, and which they shouldn't need their parents' permission as well. It shouldn't matter because
Sorry, say that again. It shouldn't
what's
matter.
wrong with having sex with children? Yeah. If they consent to, if a child 12, 11 years old consents to it, what's wrong with
Yeah.
touching? This sounds disgusting. I'm not making this up. Trust me, you need to research this. It's 100% fact. Like
No, but if
Called
someone
there's
touches,
a society in America called North American Gay Boys Association, NAG, North American Gay Boys Association, trying to legalize sex with boys. And this has actually been around for decades, okay? And they're not being very powerful. But now they're very powerful. And not just that, there are many organizations of its type being spreading by liberal societies. And it's all encouraged by the Democrats anyway, all this stuff. But
mm,
which is why I'm very much anti-Democrat. I am much more. I don't follow man-made law in that sense, okay. But the
no,
thing is, if I
I
was to
don't.
follow the list of two evils, obviously we would follow the Republicans a lot more. But the other thing with the Republicans and with the conservatism in which we agree with conservatism as Muslims, it really aligns with our belief and many things which they say. But they've got this racism right wing element which doesn't make any rational sense,
No,
and it's very offensive, and it's actually against the principle of why God created you in the first place. He created you in different tribes and nations for you to get to know each other. You can't say white or black is higher than the other. It doesn't make any rational sense.
everyone's the
Anyway,
same.
that's why if to have asabiya qawmi is also part of racism, is also part of this as well. Color of the skin, it's one of the most detestable things there is, because Satan was the first racist. He refused to bow down to Adam, and
Yeah,
so within the hemisphere of Shaitan, he encourages it a lot in society because it causes division amongst human beings.
yeah.
More than anything, it's a very shallow way of thinking. If they didn't have this racism element to it, okay, it'd be very good. It'd be very, very good. But the reason why Muslims heavily go towards the liberals, go towards the left, is because they're scared of the right, because
Yeah.
it erases them. If they didn't have that, you won't find any Muslim following liberalism. Because
Mm.
liberals, what they do is they say to you, okay, we're going to give you money for a mosque. We're going to give you permission to have a mosque. Oh, very good. And then the Muslim, yeah, very good, very good. We're going to get a mosque. Very good. Oh, we can have halal meat in schools as well. Oh, very good, which is very good. But, oh, by the way, you have to vote for us. Okay, we'll vote for you. And then you vote for liberalism, Labour, whatever it could be. And then you vote for all this stuff that comes after. Then we complain, oh, this is haram. Why are they saying this to us? But you voted for it in the first place.
That's
Uh,
why here in UK you have to vote, otherwise
but
now
you don't have to vote.
they'll start getting fines.
That isn't true. That's a myth. Whoever told you that is not true. That's a
Is it?
conspiracy. That's absolutely not true. We don't vote for man-made law. No. Whatever Allah wills, Allah wills. Allah wills for society to be change. It will change. If
mm,
Allah wants for society to become corrupt, it will become corrupt. Okay, we don't have by voting for man-made law, you're compromising your belief because you're saying sovereignty belongs to human beings. But the thing is, your vote, if Allah doesn't want something to happen, it's not going to happen.
mm.
It's qadar. Do you understand?
Yeah,
And let me give you a very simple example. They never intended for Islam to be so powerful, so influential amongst British society. So many people converted to Islam, but it happened. That never happened by voting. It just happened naturally because Allah wanted
just
it to.
naturally. Yeah,
You see tattooed people, yeah, big beefers with tattoos all over the faces, yeah, with flipping tattoos on the neck and saying hate, whatever it could be, walking past you and says, "Assalamu alaikum." What the heck? What the heck is going to hit me? Yeah, because we can't intend this happens because Allah Hidayat is from Allah.
yeah. He gives whoever
Allah
he
tests
wants.
Muslims, people, and societies. How far will you go?
Yeah,
Understand? There was a
yeah,
Muslim who talked to you about this, but you did, but you rejected him. Okay, he might have been a bit of an idiot, but he did mention this to you, but you rejected him. There's always a mechanism.
yeah,
If Allah Subhanahu wa Taala wanted the entire society, the entire world to be liberal, no matter how many times we vote against conservatism, what for conservatives, it's going to happen, and vice
yeah,
versa. It's because what Allah wants, because Allah doesn't change the circumstance of the people unless they change what's within themselves, and that's one of the
yeah.
principles.
Within themselves. Yeah,
So people say Pakistan's corrupt, Pakistan's bad, Pakistan's this. Yeah, but people are not very good. Their belief is very weak, and what they do is not very good as well in many aspects of their belief, and how they treat women, kids, and each other is not very good. I say that as a Muslim, it's not very good. I know that.
mhm.
And so it's nothing to do with Islam, it's some culture. The culture in Pakistan sometimes is quite oppressive. Some parts are good, the ones which match with Islam, and they call it culture, whatever, okay? But some parts is very oppressive, and they call it Islam. And people say Islam is bad. No, the culture is bad.
The
And
culture. Yeah,
but yeah, it's a lot of it. Some of it is quite oppressive,
mm,
and that's in most parts of the Muslim world because cause since the demise of the Khilafah, since the demise of Islam, ignorance has gone higher. When ignorance has gone high, people cling on to whatever they have, the belief systems of previous generations, the belief system of the majority, the belief system of benefit. So don't forget these cultures that are designed by man. And man always designs a culture to benefit himself. So he will oppress many other aspects of society, keep his tribe, his name, his blood in power, similar to similar smaller monarchies. And so, which exist in Pakistan, and
mm,
then they call it under Islam. But Islam doesn't say that. Islam said the most pious and the knowledgeable is the one who leads
no,
in your societies. It
yeah,
doesn't say person with Butt in his name or Patel in his name or that.
no,
That's racism, and it's not
yeah,
allowed. I don't like to use the word racism because racism to me means something completely different. Okay, racism comes from material, like angels were created from light, jinns were created from fire, we were created from clay. So we're a race. So you can't have racism within race. It doesn't make any sense. What we have tribalism and all these other terminologies.
yeah,
Because Imam Shafi he said, if you want to be proud of your color of your skin, be proud that you were created from clay. Yeah, because you were all part of one race. Do you
yeah,
understand? So it's just the English language is very. The English language encourages racism
yeah,
because it perpetuated racism in history for colonialism. So it divided people, humans, into race. The word racism, by the way, is a new term in language. It never existed before. It never existed in human. And a lot of thinkers who are against concept, Western thinkers who expose concept of racism, they say, look, it's a new term. It doesn't exist in language. It's in any language in the world. It doesn't exist because it's a new term.
yeah,
Devised by colonialists in order to separate themselves to other people. We're a race, you're a race, we're better, you're lower, blah, 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 blah. And it creates hierarchical structure within society.
yeah,
We have tribes, we have ethnicities, okay? We have people based upon their locations and they have the cultures, we have cultures, okay? But not to be separate so we know each other and we
mm,
mix with each other.
yeah,
Okay, it's completely different. Islamic concept of race is not what Western scientists, even not most Western scientists don't really believe in race. I mean, I've seen many articles on that. It's just because it's a common term used, so people just use it. Okay,
yeah.
so I hope this was very informative.
It was,
And
it was.
anyway, to people who are listening, just learn about Islam.
Yeah,
If I said anything wrong, it's because of me, my ignorance, and I do mistakes, and sometimes I go waffle and I go on and I do silly mistakes. Anything good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's no
indeed, indeed.
reward.
Knowledge is best.
There's no praise for me. It's only just remind me if I've done anything bad, in fact, whatever it could be, okay? But you learn about Islam, speak to knowledgeable Muslims about Islam. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, many mosques, people have their Bengali mosque, their Pakistani mosque. You need to find somebody who's more sincere, who's not
yeah,
doesn't follow racism and stuff, and just ask them people who are knowledgeable. You might find the
yeah,
younger generation are quite good in many aspects. Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
until next time, okay, hope this was very beneficial. But
Thank you very
remember,
much.
there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. Inshallah, may
Thank,
you people who are non-Muslim listen to this and share, may Allah give you hidayat, which means a guidance for you to come into
yeah.
Islam.
I hope,
Okay.
inshallah, everyone starts listening.
Assalamu
Yeah.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay. How was that good?
It's